A small town with a population of about 17,000 would find themselves at the center of a bizarre attack that, to this day, still has no conclusive answers for what really took place during the 2-week scare. August 31st, 1944, Mattoon, Illinois. Mr. and Mrs. Urban Rafe were asleep in bed when Mr. Rafe woke up in the middle of the night to a curious odor. Wondering if perhaps the pilot light on the stove was not functioning properly, he woke up his wife, who then attempted to check, but was taken aback by her sudden inability to move her legs. While Mrs. Rafe was stricken by the paralysis of her lower limbs, Mr. Rafe had become violently nauseous and began vomiting. Later that morning, the neighbor's daughter reportedly woke up coughing and was also temporarily stricken by paralysis, leaving her unable to leave her bed. This was the beginning of a series of similarly odd incidents that would quickly snowball into a frenzy. The following night, Mrs. Eileen Kearney and her 3-year-old daughter would become the next victims of the strange odor phenomena. At around 11 p.m., Mrs. Kearney is said to have caught a whiff of a sweet-smelling gas, followed by a loss of feeling in her legs. She was paralyzed from the waist down for about half an hour, during which her daughter, who was sleeping in the same room as her, was overcome by an illness that lasted throughout the night. An account from this particular incident reports that Mattoon police received a call from Eileen that someone had pumped gas into her bedroom. According to her husband, Mr. Kearney, upon returning home late at night when he received news of his wife's ailments, he spotted a prowler outside the window and chased the figure with no success. Kearney reported that the individual was wearing all black, as well as a tight-fitted cap, and was tall. While both she and her daughter recovered quickly, Mrs. Kearney reported that through the next day, her mouth and throat felt parched and her lips felt burned, which she attributed to the prowler's unknown form of gas. Word of this attack spread quickly, and Mattoon's daily newspaper, the Mattoon Journal-Gazette, published the story with the headline, "Anesthetic Prowler on the Loose, Mrs. Jones and Daughter First Victims." Being that the population was so small at the time, the Gazette reached 97% of families in Mattoon, likely making it a prominent source of information for such a small town. Their publication received a large number of attention from locals, which some could argue only added to an already paranoid populace in the context of World War II. D-Day had only just happened, and some sort of retaliatory attack would not have been unfathomable at the time. The press had written extensively about the possibility of gas warfare from the Nazis, so this type of attack could have potentially been on the horizon, given the current state of affairs. Not only did people fear Nazi gas warfare, but the town of Mattoon had even had a threat of an escaped Nazi. Additionally, there had been a recent increase of break-ins in town. The Mattoon Journal-Gazette's headliner was the beginning of a series of perplexing cases involving a phantom attacker who was later dubbed the Mad Gasser of Mattoon. Astutely, T.R. Reed of the Washington Post questioned years later why, in fact, the Mattoon Journal-Gazette predicted a string of similar attacks to come after this. Neighbors of the first victim who reported the gas attack began to report similar attacks in the days following the Gazette article, leading to more Gazette headlines such as, "Mad anesthetist strikes again." Interestingly, on September 7th, the gasser made news again, despite there being no reported attacks on that day. The article read, "Mattoon's mad anesthetist apparently took a respite from his maniacal forays Thursday night. Terrified citizens inclined to hold their breath and wonder when and where he might strike next." Chicago papers also circulated in Mattoon and soon picked up the story, adding to the growing number of articles also recounting the nightly attacks in Mattoon. For 2 weeks straight, there was a steady and steep increase in the amount of gasser attacks reported. It seemed most of the alleged attacks happened during the night, ranging at around from 10 p.m. to the early morning hours. 25 residents all made similar claims. They woke up in the middle of the night smelling heavy gas, which would cause them to choke, vomit, and/or become temporarily paralyzed. Generally, the only physical evidence were mostly footprints found underneath windows or torn window screens. In a later report, another citizen reported seeing the gasser, suggesting the person in question was a woman dressed as a man, and found a woman's footprints below a window. Despite the great commotion they were causing the town, the gasser, or any trace of them, was yet to be found by Mattoon police, who had assigned a 10-person team to the case. State police were also called in, and bands of vigilantes also prowled the night in search of a culprit. At this point, the gasser became a national figure, fighting with headlines about war, the presidential election, and other big topics during that time. Even Time wrote about the gasser. "He moves through the night as nimbly and secretly as a cat, squirting his Swedish gas through bedroom windows." The Army's Chemical Warfare Service also got involved, attempting to determine what the supposed gas could have been. By September 12th, the police had been reportedly overwhelmed by what they now believed were false reports, and thus they decided to reduce the priority of the gasser investigation. Later that day, the Mattoon police chief, C.E. Cole, released a statement on the police's shocking decision regarding the case, in which they told the public that the entire incident was likely the result of explainable occurrences exacerbated by public fears, and a sign of the anxiety felt by women while local men were on war service. The police investigation had led them to believe that the gasser did not actually exist, but that the way in which the wind shifted at night was causing the gases created from a local war plant to end up inside people's homes. They also believed that the mass outbreak of cases were likely the result of the hysteria that had overtaken the terrified town. Additionally, the police investigation also led them to theorize that the various footprints that were found by victims and glimpses of the gasser fleeing the alleged victims' homes may have actually been bystanders who had taken it upon themselves to investigate homes that were increasingly erupting with hysteria and chaos. Whether or not this report truly broke the spell of fear and hysteria is unknown, but the reports of attacks ended abruptly after its release. A suspect was never named, and files were never charged. The ambiguity surrounding this case has left some highly dubious, believing that the mad gasser of Mattoon never really existed at all. Alternatively, and naturally, many have theorized possible answers to such a bizarre episode in history. The three most common accepted theories about the mad gasser of Mattoon include mass hysteria, industrial pollution, and an assailant who has never been found. The theory of mass hysteria is generally the most popular theory, especially in correlation with theories about industrial waste affecting the community. Additionally, both these theories don't necessarily rule out the idea that there could have been a gasser, but that the reported cases hit unrealistic numbers. At the time, local Commissioner of Public Health Thomas V. Wright stated in regards to the outbreak of cases, "There is no doubt that a gas maniac exists and has made a number of attacks, but many of the reported attacks are nothing more than hysteria. Fear of the gas man is entirely out of proportion to the menace of the relatively harmless gas he is spraying. The whole town is sick with hysteria." The Illinois Crime Bureau and Professor D.M. Johnson, a psychologist at the University of Illinois, performed a detailed investigation of the attacks and found that there was never any real gas used in the attacks, as well as finding there to be no evidence of a prowler. The report, however, did find that the physical symptoms many victims faced were real and in line with classic symptoms of mass hysteria. Fortunately, the symptoms from these attacks were not deadly nor severe and had no long-term effects. Professor Johnson wrote in his report that the string of attacks were largely started by the imagination of that first woman, who claimed to be a victim. The case of the phantom anesthetist was entirely psychogenic, an exciting, uncritical story appearing in the evening paper. As the news spread, other people reported similar symptoms, more exciting stories were written, and so the affair snowballed. He believed largely that the case of the mad gasser was a testament to the influential power of the press on public opinion, as well as on public health. 2 women were even admitted to the hospital, claiming to be victims of the gasser, but were eventually labeled as having nervous tension. Johnson claims that such hysteria would not have broken out if the Mattoon Journal-Gazette hadn't published that headline the day after one person reported being gassed. Experts also point to the precedent of mass hysteria taking over communities throughout history, perhaps best evidenced by the various dancing plagues in Europe in the 1300s through the 1500s, during which towns of people claimed that they found themselves dancing against their will, compulsively dancing, sometimes in public, for extended periods of time to exhaustion. There are still some researchers who believe that the gas attacks could have been done by an actual attacker. There are also a faction of people who believe that the gasser may be attributed to paranormal activity. According to the Washington Post, the original lady who reported being gassed eventually returned to her normal life and did not discuss anything about her initial report about the gas attack incident. The case of the mad gasser of Mattoon is now widely used as an example of mass hysteria in psychology classes. And if the mad gasser really existed, the motive alone, which is unclear and perplexing, is enough to leave one guessing.